Hi, this is the map from Dora the Explorer, and you're watching a podcast where nostalgia comes alive. It's Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show. Roll it! Oh man, I wanted to say roll it too.
Welcome to Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, the podcast where nostalgia comes alive. Since July of 2021, Jake and his friends have interviewed professionals in the worlds of acting, directing, writing, puppeteering, and many more. Who will they be chatting with in this week's interview? Find out in this Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show episode.
Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, where nostalgia comes alive. If you're here with us, thank you for joining us. As always, I'm your host, Jake Deffinbaugh. Me as always, co-host Chris Bixby and Matt Bingel. How you guys doing?
Doing good, Jake.
Doing good. Howdy ho, peeps. How you doing?
Yes. How you doing, Jake?
I'm doing great, Chris. Thank you for asking. What do we have for today?
Our guest for today, first of all, special thanks to DJ Bob for helping us connect with him.
We love you, Bob.
Yes, our guest wears different hats. He is an actor, a puppeteer, and he also works in the audio department. And we're here to talk about his work in all of those fields. And here he is, Nate Begle. Nate, happy to have you here. How are you?
I'm great. What's going on, guys? You know, Jake, you're saying it's the Happy Nostalgia Show, and you're like, where nostalgia comes alive, and all I could think about was...
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Need that for when you talk about nostalgia. Do you know what I think? Jake goes, you know what I think about nostalgia? I think that nostalgia...
It's alive! It's alive!
You know, stuff like that. That's where it's alive here.
It is.
We're alive. We're all alive. Yes, we're all alive. We're happy. We're happy to be alive.
Yes.
We love nostalgia. So it's happy. It's happy
Absolutely.
good times.
Very happy.
And I'm happy to be here. Gosh
Yes,
darn it.
Yes, and we're happy to have you here.
Yes.
It's a pleasure.
Yes.
Of course. So,
You could see the fear pass all of their eyes. They're like, oh my, what have we done? As Shatner said so eloquently, my God, what have I done?
so to start this off, could you tell our audience a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yes. Hi, friends. I'm Nate Begle, and basically what I say, and I kind of put this on my business card or my little snapshot, is I'm a voice actor and a puppeteer and an audio producer, and I bring characters to life. I bring characters and stories and words to life. That's pretty much what I say, and to kind of sum it up. And it goes deep. It goes deep. There's lots of different facets. There's lots of different meanings behind what is life. You know, it's alive, as we said earlier. But that is what I do. That's been my passion. And it has become my profession. My passion turned into my profession, and in not just one particular avenue, but in many different avenues. But at the core basis, when and we'll talk about my little journey and how it started in puppetry and went to voice work and then into the audio realm in general, in a wider scope. But the through line through all of it is bringing stories, is storytelling, bringing stories to life, bringing characters to life,
Right.
bringing words on the page to life. And that is truly what I like to call, for one of my great voiceover mentors, Mick Wingert, my irreducible minimum. My irreducible minimum is just, that's what I want, that's what I need to do. That's what I'm here to do, is to bring things to life, however, whatever that means, in whatever facet. If it's through my fleshy meat sack body on stage or on camera or in a Zoom window, or if it's through a puppet, or if it's just through my vocal performance. You know, it's all storytelling and bringing that stuff to life. So that's what I do. And good, loved your many different hats. That's a literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
There's any more than this too. These kind of rotate. That's in the Zoom window, but they're all over the place. But yes, hats is a kind of another through line. Did that make sense?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep.
Absolutely. Indeed. So what was your background?
Thank you, John. Thank you. You thought it made sense too. Thank you, little John. I
Great.
appreciate you.
Great.
Thank you.
Such a good.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Such a.
What?
They said thank you. They said thank you. You are an amazing hype man.
Okay!
Okay.
Oh, gosh. Sorry,
Sorry, Jake. Go ahead. You have the floor. You have the talking stick.
Well, thank you, Nate. So, what was your background like, and how did you grow up?
So that's a really great question. So for me, my entrance into like the entertainment realm and into performance in general was through puppetry. Puppetry was my gateway into the entertainment business, and it stemmed. I call it my light switch moment. My light switch moment kind of happened around like 7 years old. And to date me, I was back in my day. There was the original airing of Fraggle Rock was on in the
Oh yeah.
early '80s.
Yes, great show.
And also the reboot. You guys check out the reboot. That
Oh,
John
yes.
Tartaglia was
Yes,
the spearhead of.
love it.
Absolutely.
So
It's
excited
amazing.
for the
And
second
John
season.
Tartaglia does such a great job with Gobo.
Yes,
Yes.
Johnny T.
Donna Kimball.
Donna Kimball, yeah.
Donna Kimball is
Jordan
just
Lockhart.
a national
yeah,
treasure.
Yeah.
But Johnny T was one of my nearest and dearest, and is actually a very big reason that I have the career that I have today. Is John Tartaglia. I'll talk a little bit about that, but he really gave me my first real big start, in the puppetry world, of professional performance. But yeah, because he loves it and he is so immensely talented, and so he put so much of his essence. Can we say that? Can I say essence on this? Like the Dark Crystal, they were taking the essence. He put so much of his essence into that show and getting it, and it started like the reboot kind of happened during COVID when they were doing it. Did you guys watch like the shorts that they did? It was all kind of on Zoom, and then they were like, people are loving this. Let's make it a real thing when we can get through COVID a little bit, and yeah, it just has the same exact heart and love that the original Fraggle Rock has.
Absolutely.
And Johnny's always carried that through his work. Is like the life, the love, the goals, the intentions that Jim Henson always had for his projects and things like that. Johnny puts in all of his projects. So, love it. But anyway, yes, the original run of Fraggle Rock was my light switch moment. As a kid growing up, I loved when I was very young. The original Muppet Show was still in syndication. It had only kind of been off the air for like less than 10 years. So it was still kind of on PBS a lot. It was still airing a lot of those episodes. And so I fell in love with the Muppet Show, and of course watched Sesame Street as a kid. And I went from the switch was being a kid, like knowing all the characters' names, just loving them, laughing with them, learning with them, and just, believing that they're real, believing that they're just real characters, living, breathing things that are right there talking to me, engaging with me. And then the switch went from, I now know that spoilers, they're not real on their own. They're like, these are made, they're fabric and they're fleece and they're fur and they're foam, and somebody is bringing them to life. There's something happening below the frame. And that switch, when I realized that that's what was going on, instead of being, my whole life is a lie, my whole world has been shattered, the magic is ruined, instead of that happening, which some companies think that will happen if you peel back the curtain a little bit, instead of that, I was more enthralled and more fascinated, and it made it that much more magical to me. And I really went to like, I love them, that's funny too. How do they do that? How are they doing that? What is going on below the frame? I gotta know. And that's what started it. And that's what started that journey that has led me to where I am now, ultimately. And I also say, back in my day, we didn't have a thing called the Googles, or the YouTubes, or the Zooms, or the Skypes, or any of those things. We didn't have any of this magical stuff. So I had to go to this wondrous place called the library. And in this wondrous, magical place, they had these things upon the walls, on shelves, that you could grab called books. And so I literally checked out every book that I could about puppetry, the art of puppetry, and building puppets, and just dived deep into that knowledge of what it takes to do that, like what's happening here, and then all the things. And the more I learned, the more fascinated I became, and the more I rolled into it and started building my own puppets and creating my own characters, I really just fell in love with that aspect of character creation and thus storytelling, telling these, creating these characters from the ground up, from the inside out, and then telling their story, whatever that story may be. And that's really that's the genesis, or the Sega Genesis, if you will, of my of the start into my career as an entertainer, as a performer, as a actor, puppeteer, voice actor, producer, director, engineer, all of those kind of things. And that's been the constant through line. So it was through puppetry that I found that love and fascination. And where I grew up and went to school, there wasn't really a puppetry outlet. Again, there wasn't the YouTubes where I could go on and be like, how can I be a puppeteer? That kind of thing. There's no way to do that. And so I went the traditional theatrical route, as my inclinations were leaning more towards the performance, and comedy and things like that, doing voices, playing characters, performing. So I went the traditional acting route and got my degree in musical theater. So, and throughout my elementary school days and my high school days, I would incorporate puppetry elements whenever I could in productions that be in and things like that. I was always doing it on my own, even though if I wasn't able to have an actual, there wasn't like a puppet camp near me that I could go to, things like that. I wasn't aware of like UConn at the time either. I went to college in the late 90s, guys. I didn't know that. That makes me so old. I just changed the tennis balls on my walker, actually. And I also had Jell-O today. So I wasn't aware of UConn, that you can go literally get your degree in the puppetry arts. So I got my degree in theater, musical theater. Fell in love with musical theater as well, and that storytelling. And so I really trained myself as an actor and incorporated puppetry elements therein. And I believe that training has served me quite well in creating more characters and becoming other characters, but having this added challenge of channeling that. And I teach this in my puppetry workshops and my voice acting workshops as well. And this is where voice acting kind of comes hand in hand, and how my career kind of went into that specific tangent. From puppetry into that, is that I would taking everything that I would do, any preparation, all the stuff that I would do to prepare for a role, if I was to be this character on stage or on camera as myself, and everything that I do, everything that I would do, every preparation I would take, every thoughtful movement, every intentional action, but then channeling that through my arm and making this inanimate object on my arm do that, come to life in that way. And that became the really fun added challenge that I always incorporated whenever I could. But that core foundation that I built in character creation and acting 101 has served me very well, and be able to then channel that through that. And I also do that same for voice acting. Do the same thing, the same preparation, same attention, same approach to a role, but then we're just channeling it through a very specific window. And as a voice actor, I'm channeling it solely through my vocal performance, and still getting across all that information, still making all of those same connections. And that's the other thing that I really felt that's my connection was the storytelling, and thus the connection to the audience being enthralled, the audience being engaged, the audience responding, the audience laughing. It's what, keeps me going. So that's really what happened. And then after I graduated college, I made the move to New York. I sold my car. I sold many of my possessions, saved up a ton of money, and with a backpack and a suitcase, hopped on a train and took the train to New York. And I stayed in New York for about 15 years. literally. And when I got into New York with that full intention of like, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm going to achieve, and just made that a goal that I would not stop attaining or not stop reaching for. And then cut to my very first professional puppetry performance in New York City was a show called Die Hard, the Puppet Musical.
Oh, nice.
And it is as awesome as it sounds. It is a musical based on the movie Die Hard with puppets. And it was phenomenal. It was a very small independent production, but I got cast as a couple different roles, but my main role was Hans Gruber, where I got to say, ladies and gentlemen, and due to the Nakatomi Corporation's legacy of greed around the globe, I get to do my best little puppety Alan Rickman. And it was so much fun, but it was just a blast, and that's when I first got connected and networked and started meeting the New York City puppetry community. And it was through that led me to working with other people and working on the next project and the next project, which then led me to an audition was posted for John Tartaglia's Imagine Ocean. And John Tartaglia's Imagine Ocean had basically kind of like an open call, and it was going to run off-Broadway. It was an off-Broadway full blacklight family musical, and solely with puppets. And that's when it takes me back to Johnny T. And Johnny T, I came in as a fresh-faced noob, like nobody. I walk into this room, and I'd been in many like auditions, cattle calls, audition calls for musicals and other shows and things like that. This was not new to me, this type of audition. But when you walk into that room and you see, oh, everybody knows everybody. You could tell, and they're sitting there and they're talking, oh man, we had such a good time working on this show and things like that. And you're like, oh, they all know each other. They've already worked with each other and done these kind of things. I have no chance. Getting cast in this, like, 8-person company. But I walked in and I did my audition. The audition was, if you have a puppet, bring it. If not, we have puppets for you. But because the show was not going to be done live, it wasn't going to be performed live, it was all going to be done to track. It was all going to be basically just they hit play and then you do it, right? And
like lip sync.
Basically, yeah, exactly.
Yes.
The whole show was pre-recorded. The whole show was tracked. So it was like you don't have to do anything live. It's going to take place under the ocean. So there was certain elements that they needed to kind of see in your audition, and a lot of that extra stuff kind of came with the callbacks. But the initial walk into the room, and there's a table of people, and there's Johnny T sitting there, right there in the front. It was my first chance meeting him, just with the biggest, warmest, most welcoming smile. And you could just tell he's just like excited to be here, excited that his show is getting an off-Broadway run, right? And they're putting it up. And the audition was to do two different songs, an up-tempo song and like a ballad, which is kind of like a traditional musical theater audition, but you would typically be singing those. You'd be singing 16 bars of an up-tempo and 16 bars of a ballad. But instead, they want you to bring a song up-tempo and puppeteer and lip-sync to that, just to kind of show you that you could do range. You could lip-sync quickly, or, how well you can lip-sync to an up-tempo beat. And just your, general manipulation. They can really, especially Johnny, it's pro. Been, especially pro puppeteer, Sesame Street since he was 16, that kind of thing. And those of us that been doing puppetry for a long time, you can tell when somebody's got that, they know what they're doing. They have the basics down, right? And then there's always we can always teach them other things that we may need to teach them for a specific show or specific movements and things like that. But it's a great little intro to see what somebody has. And I had two puppets. I had actually, so one of my first jobs when I moved to New York was I got a job because even though I saved a bunch of money and went up and I was like, I'm going to audition and stuff like that. But guess what? New York City, you got to get a job. You got to do something before you get cast in something, right? And I got a job at the now extinct FAO Schwartz in the Muppet Workshop.
Oh, nice.
The FAO
Wow.
short. Do you guys remember that? You guys were familiar
Yeah,
with
yeah,
the
yeah.
Muppet
Yeah,
Workshop
yeah.
that they put
Yeah.
in the
Uh-huh.
New York City
Yep.
FAO Shorts? And it was
Yeah.
awesome. It was so cool. So I got
It
a
was.
job,
Really
and
was.
that was through a connection that I made through doing Die Hard the Puppet musical, and yeah, it all just kind of worked out. So I worked there for quite a while and was building puppets. And so anyway, I built my own. I had my own 2 Whatnot puppets that I built at the workshop, and so I brought them and used them for my audition. And the 2 songs that I did was a slow version of "Are You Gonna Be My Girl" by Jet. You know, it's like, "Are you gonna be my," you know, the "Are You Gonna Be My Girl" song, how that goes. It's like a fast.
I do. Yeah.
So it's a fast song, but I had a slow, loungy, kind of sexy version of it that was done by Richard Cheese. If you guys aren't familiar with
Oh,
Richard
yes.
Cheese,
I love Richard.
Ah, yes.
Yeah,
anybody
I think
listening out
so.
His
here?
parody, his covers are hilarious.
They're so great. They're so
Yes.
great. They're just loungy, fun, like versions of popular.
Oh, yeah.
songs, right. So it was a Richard Cheese version of "Are You Gonna Be My Girl," and it was like this slow, sexy, and there was something really funny about that to me, right? So I chose that for my ballad, and my up tempo was Rockapella's "Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego?"
Yay!
Nice.
Yay!
Great
Nice.
choice.
Yay!
And
choice.
here's my
That's
and
awesome.
So here's my thought process for this, and this is what I recommend to anybody that goes out to audition for things, and no matter what you're auditioning for. It's so important to not, and it's very difficult to do, especially when you're new and you're green and you're starting out and you really want it, right? Is to try to tamp down that, like, God, I hope I get it. Like, I really want this, right? That desperation effects comes through in your performances. It really does. And when you're in the room and they can sense that you're nervous already, but then they can also sense, you know, it affects it. And it what it does is it puts a roadblock into the creators and the writers and the directors and the producers seeing who you are. Because what they're going to do when they cast, they want to know, like, who am I going to be working with? Right? I already, like, I'm going to see your talent. I'm going to see that you're talented. But I really also want to know, that's part of the audition process as well. It's like, who are you? You know, who is this? Somebody that I'm I'm happy to work with 8 shows a week. You know?
Right.
Somebody you're basically, especially on an off-Broadway run, like, I'm going to live with these people. And it's like, so that's very much a part of any kind of, when you're auditioning for a show in a company or a run of something, the creators are looking at that as well. So it's really part of your practice and training before getting into an audition is to kind of tamp down that, like, oh, I really want this, God, I hope I get it kind of energy.
Mm-hmm.
So what I also then recommend is what you want to do is you don't go into an audition, I've always approached my career and life and things like that in a very practical, pragmatic manner, right? Where I go, you know, and I was saying, like, when I was looking at this room, it's like, everybody knows each other. Like, what business do I have being here, right? And I had that passing thought, I had that feeling go by, and I let it happen, and then I let it go. Because my intention always is, for every audition it's like, I'm not auditioning to go, I'm going to get this. I'm getting this job. I have no, like, I have no preset intention of, like, I'm getting this role right now in this room. What I do, I still do. Did I just say do?
What?
Yeah, you heard me. What I do is, when I walk into that room, or when I send in the audition, or even a voiceover audition, I go, I want them to remember me. That's what I want. I don't necessarily, I'm like, I want them to, of course I want the gig, of course. But I don't want to leave this stamp of, like, yeah, you're going to hire me, right? I'm the best for this. I want them to remember me. So because maybe I won't fit this role. Maybe I won't be right. Maybe something will change. But if nothing else, I want to make an impression. And this is my first impression. This is them seeing me for the first time. I want to make an impression and say, you know, even if I don't get this, it's like, yeah, you know what? You know who I remember? Do you remember that one guy that did that one thing? let's call him in for this. He might be good for this, that kind of thing. And that's what I always try to do, even in my voiceover auditions. It's like, and I've gotten gigs, a little bit of a tangent, then I'll go back to the story, but I've gotten work, lots of work, where months later, even years later, out of the blue, like, we'd like to cast you in this project for something I never auditioned for, because they heard me audition for something else for them. And it didn't work out for that, for whatever reason, but they remembered my audition. And they were like, you know what? You know who I think would be good for this? Is that person. And so that's always that, and I encourage that to any performer out there. It's like, just go and show them who you are, and just make an impression. Make them remember you. And so don't go, God, I hope I get it. It's like, I just want them to remember me. So that's was kind of my thought process of like these songs. One, it made me laugh. I thought it was funny. And I'm like, this is just going to be, and I guarantee, and also having pre-knowledge of like, what do the theater people like audition with? What are like the audition songs that are like, don't do those because everybody does those, right? So I really thought outside the box for my songs because I kind of had free reign because I wasn't singing them. My puppets were, right? So I could do anything. So it was like, it was very freeing. And so I was like, my one character, and he's, bless him, he's all, my whatnots, they've all kind of fallen apart at this point. But
his name was Stu, and he was very nervous. So he had glasses on and a little aloha shirt on and things. And so I got him up and I walked him up. He had no legs, but I walked him in front of them, and I said, "Hello, my name is Stu."
And they were just like, what's happening? I had the puppets literally introduce themselves and who they were doing. Again, I'm not voicing any characters for this role. I'm not doing any of that, but I'm showing them what I do, and I'm showing them who I am, right?
So then he still walks up with no feet, and I say, and now I will be performing Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego in 4-part harmony all by myself. Thank you.
And then I stood back, and then they hit play, and then I just had him like jump to like each other. When one specific part was like yeah, and then he would hop, and he'd hop to each spot, and I kind of pre-choreographed. I took note of like where every voice was, and I had him jump over there and then singing little bits in there and like singing together with himself. I just made I made a scene basically just out of him singing Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego. And it was fun. They were laughing. I was feeling good. I was just having a good time, right? I went in there and I just had a good time. And this has never happened to me in any audition before or since. But what they were doing in this audition too, they were you would go in and you would do your song, and then they'd go, "Oh, thank you so much. That was great. Thank you so much. Just take a seat outside for a second." And then you'd sit outside and they'd deliberate. And then their casting agent would come out and say, "Thank you so much for your time. We really enjoyed you. We'll get back to you," kind of thing. We're just like, didn't get it. Bye. Or they'd be like, "Yes, they'd love for you to come back to the callback later today at like 2 p.m." Right? And so that's what they would do. What happened to me was they were laughing, and Johnny stopped. Johnny said, we never do this, and I never do this, but I think I'm gonna speak for everybody and just right now say, will you come to the callback? So he asked me. I got asked by Johnny in the room. That was amazing. He also said that was the smartest audition that I have seen in a very, very long time. And I think I speak for everybody. Can you come to the callback today? And so that was like I was riding a high on that. It was amazing. So even if that's where it ended, I'd have been like, I did my job, right? I brought who I am. They could see my sense of humor. They could see my lip sync ability, my puppetry skills in that realm, right? And I was super happy with that. And then I went to the callback, and we did a lot more like body movement, choreography kind of things, because there was going to be a lot of intricate kind of black light specific training and movement in the show. And long story short, and then I got cast in the show, which was amazing as one of like 2 brand new people that the company, and Johnny did not already previously know or have worked with. So Johnny T really, and that being in that company, and then everything that has rolled since then has been and my interactions with other puppetry professionals and working with Sesame Street folk and working with Henson Company people on other projects, just so many projects now over the years. This has been well over 10 years since that show. We did Imagination in 2011, 2012. And then I rolled into and I went on the 2 international tours of that show as well. So I was with that show for a number of years, did well over 1,000+ performances of John Tartaglia's Imagination, which, to my understanding now, is playing at San Antonio SeaWorld. They have our own little sit in SeaWorld now. So anyway, that's a little bit of a longer story, but I haven't told that story in a while, and I think I like to share that story of that, it's a true testament of follow your passion, and also a little bit of and I teach this again to a lot of my younger actors in voice work and also in puppetry, but it's a kind of a mental thing of like, you got to get out of your own way a little bit.
Right.
Trust yourself. Trust you're like, this is what I have. This is what I do. This is what I bring, and I'm going to show it to them. And I want them to remember me. I'm going to make an impression and see what happens.
Definitely.
And it takes some time to get there internally, especially for people that are like super hungry and like, oh, this is what I want so bad. And of course, we want to book the gig, but it's more important that you bring you to the table, bring you to the audition. And and so cut to, it is through that realm that and doing more work and more character work and more puppet projects and things like that some colleagues of mine, namely the great Tyler Bunch,
oh yes, great friend of ours,
super amazing guy, very good friend of mine as well. I got to work with him on many different things, and we were working together on a show and just playing around, and he and I are just super simpatico, doing voices, doing characters, just talking to each other, like just doing bits all the time, like just like at lunch, just hanging out, just not even like on set really, just kind of sitting there and just running a bit for a long time and doing character works and impressions and things like that. And he was the one that said to me, have you ever thought about doing voice work? And I said, no. Because I was so like, I want to be a puppeteer. I want to be a professional puppeteer. That's my thing. That is my focus. And he goes, I'm going to be honest with you. Like this, your approach to this, your character building ability, and your attention to details and your skills at accents and dialects and your vocal range is something super, super strong. And I think it's something you should absolutely think about pursuing. And hearing that from somebody that I immensely respect and idolize his talent in what he does as a puppeteer and as a voice actor, I was like, wow. And sometimes it takes somebody that is super good at what they do to go, you're good at this. You should think about doing this. And that's what it took. And I was like, pfft. And so that really just opened my world that much more.
Definitely.
And I started pursuing that. I started and I went, started taking classes, started coaching with voice acting and voice work and harnessing those skills. And through coaching, through training, lots in practice, got an agent, and started booking work, started doing commercials, started doing audiobooks, started doing e-learning, started doing corporate narration, started doing a lot of animation. And that's all the stuff that I still do today. Now here in my home studio. I'm no longer in New York City. I had to move to Florida for family a number of years ago. But the nice thing is that I had built up my career in New York to this place where, and especially in voice work, and at that point, voiceover was primarily what I was doing, more so than puppetry work. Puppetry work kind of ebbs and flows a lot more than most entertainment, most performance-based jobs, if you will. So when I had to move, it was one of those, and this was pre-COVID, before everybody has a home studio. I had a home studio. I was making a broadcast. I was doing broadcast on-air work in my half of a closet in my studio apartment in New York City for like 6 years. And I had built up a client base. I had built up direct clients that knew my work and knew what I could do. And I did a lot of mostly in-studio stuff in New York, but I started to do a lot of home studio recordings in my apartment. But I was able to keep those clients, keep that work, that remote work. Before remote work was really a thing, I was already kind of doing it. And so I was able to bring that work with me as I came down here, and was able to afford to, have a little bit more space and now have my own isolated booth and things like that. And then as the years have gone on, just built up my client base even more and gravitated more into the audio production realm as well, which kind of goes hand in hand with my performance work. And then I do puppetry stuff whenever I can. You guys know Adam Krudinger?
Oh, yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Adam Krudinger, puppet nerd himself, super good dude. I'm he does a puppet camp every year, and I was a guest camp counselor just recently with some of his kids with creating character voices. He reached out to me and was like, "Hey, would you run like one of my camp days as working on character voices for puppets?" And I was like, "Yeah, man, absolutely." So love working with Adam. Done a lot of other things that he builds such beautiful stuff, such gorgeous puppets. He's just a phenomenal puppet builder, and I've thankfully been able to work with a lot of his beautiful work. You guys know the Thomas Sanders?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Thomas
yes.
Sanders. He was like super huge on Vine back when Vine was a thing.
Yeah.
That makes me
Yep.
feel super old too. And I was like,
Right?
God, and you're like, God, you remember when Vine was a thing? And
Oh,
we're like,
yeah.
that was like, what, 2 years ago? Yeah, when Vine was a thing.
Yeah, because I remember when it was new.
Yes, it
Yes,
wasn't
oh
that
my
long
gosh.
ago, guys. This is
No.
wild. Well, like, because
Yeah.
now,
Right?
and when TikTok became a thing, I was like, this is just Vine. They killed
Yeah,
Vine.
pretty much.
And then TikTok
Yeah.
took the reins.
It's pretty
and they
much just Vine, but a little bit longer.
Yeah,
you know?
Vine, just like kind of Vine times 10 now, like Vine, or even times 100 now. There's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah.
There's a lot more, but it was basically the same kind of thing, just short form content. But the cool thing about Vine was it was like 6 seconds, right? And it was like on a loop. And so it was a very specific window of people that got popular on Vine because they had to get really, really creative and make something clever, make something funny, make something engaging, but also that either got funnier every 6 seconds or, at least
Yeah.
didn't want you to didn't make your brain explode by looping for 6 seconds. So
Mhm.
it created a very interesting realm of content creators. Frankie Cordero, you guys know
Oh,
Frankie
yeah.
Cordero.
Of course.
Yes.
Made
love
it big
Yes.
with Corduroy Cat on the Vine, and I don't know
Yep.
if he still uses Corduroy Cat somewhere. He's too busy being on Don Quixote, but
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
but great Frankie, another dear, awesome, great friend, and
Yes.
but yeah, his Corduroy Cat became huge on Vine. He became one of those Vine stars as well. But anyway, Thomas Sanders
Wow.
was super big on Vine, and then once Vine shut down, he kind of gravitated over towards Instagram and YouTube. And now he's really big on YouTube. And then he created his own little series called Sanders Sides, which is his very simplistic version, but really beautifully. And he's just an incredible writer and a really talented performer. That personified these sides of his personality, right? And they would just pop out, and they'd be around him, and he would solve problems. And you can see them on YouTube. Just look up Sanders Sides. But Thomas Sanders, reached out to Adam to build puppet versions of his personality sides. Did you guys ever see this episode?
I think so, yeah. That's
think
cool that he
so.
did that, yeah.
It's called, if you look it up, if you look up Thomas Sanders and Sanders Sides Learning About Ourselves, right? And it's this I'm trying to, processing feelings, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? And I don't know how to deal with this, that kind of thing. And then his sides are pop out, and they're all trying to help solve these problems, right? That's the basic of the whole series. But then they all go, well, how do we used to learn, as kids? And they're like, puppets, right? And so the sides turn themselves into puppets, and they do a very musical Sesame Street episode, a very beautiful homage of solving this problem, learning about ourselves, learning about our emotions, and how to work through them and talk about them, that kind of thing. It's a really, really wonderful special episode. But he commissioned Adam to build fun, different puppet versions of each of these sides. And so Adam reached out to me to be connected with Thomas and kind of give him a little puppetry 101. Kind of like he's like they built the puppets, and then he says building these puppets for this guy, very popular on YouTube, going to do this big episode, but they want to do the puppets themselves. I was like, great. Have they ever done puppets before? No. I'm like, great. So they want me to teach them how to do on-camera puppetry in like an hour. And he was like, yeah, kind of. So it was basically like 3 hours. So I did like this big on Zoom. Actually, it was on Skype, I think, at the time. And like a 3-hour crash course in TV puppetry for people that love puppets but had never done it before in their lives. And so it went great, and we got along really well. Cut to after they went and they tried it, and they basically in their, and kudos to them and Sanders and the care that he has for the quality of his product that he puts out of his show, is that they're like, yeah, it looks terrible. It's horrible. It's so hard. They were like, it's so hard. We can't do this. And they was like, hey, but we're on a deadline here. Could you come and do it and puppeteer all of the characters for us? And I was like, you know what? Absolutely. I'll be there tomorrow. And so that's what we did. And I had a beautiful whole full day. So if you watch that episode, I am, once they turn into puppets, I am puppeteering all 4 of his sides, and I got to perform all of his characters in that way. I'm not vocalizing them.
Right.
Again, it's one of those, he's doing the voices, and he recorded it in this really cool way where he typically records his episodes because he's playing each part, so they record each section separately, and then they just edit it together. So he basically did that, and that's what we kind of practice, and that's actually what I walked through for him in order to practice. I was like, just record it the way you do. And give yourself a reference. Give yourself a reference of like what your character is doing in that moment, how he's reacting, what he's doing with his hands, that kind of thing. In that moment, in that shot, and then record it and cut that together like you do a normal episode. And then when you want to then place in the puppet version of that, you have a reference of what your character was doing in that moment and how they moved and how they gestured possibly when you said that kind of thing. So you already had the audio kind of track. So I basically went in and just lip synced to his performance, and I looked at his reference material and basically brought the puppet to life in the same way that he was doing it as himself. It was a really cool thing, and it was a long, just one day shoot, and it turned out really well. It's a wonderful little video. Highly recommend you guys checking that out. But yeah, Adam Krudinger was super helpful. So, but that's one of those like fun puppet gigs that just kind of happens sometimes. You never know. So it's not as steady as my voiceover and audio production work. And then really quickly, some of that, my audio production work, as I was getting my degree in musical theater, I doubled in digital. I speak for a living, guys. Digital media productions. And again, this was in the late 90s. So digital media was kind of a new thing.
New thing, yeah.
It was a new frontier. But I cut my teeth in TV and radio, doing digital media editing. And I learned, everything. It was back when Adobe was like the new thing on the street. Pro Tools didn't exist yet, I don't think, in the late 90s. So I cut, so I have that skill, digital editing, audio production, video, things like that, and that served me very well in other projects and things that I've done. But also now cut to, I have my own production studio, Begle Booth Studios, that does full voiceover and audio production for basically anything. Commercials, I've done voiceover and production work for commercials, animation, audiobooks, podcasts, YouTube channels, kind of anything, audio dramas, and I do primarily what I'm doing now to bring it up to the present, and then I'll stop talking, is dubbing. I do a lot of dubbing. for a lot of foreign films and live action and animation projects that are being dubbed into English. And I have the setup here where I do it all from my studio as well.
Nice. So
Back over to you guys. So that's me in a nutshell, in a very big nutshell.
so you
That was a
mentioned
long story. Do I talk for a living? Can you tell? Can I tell stories? Did I keep your audience riveted? Is anyone still on? Little John. Little John?
Okay.
Yeah, you liked it? Okay, good. Did you like it?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
That's good. That's good.
Thank you. As long as Little John likes it.
Yes.
I
So
said
silly.
as long as you like it.
So you mentioned working for Sesame Street and the Jim Henson Company. It's interesting because we've had a number of people on from both of those fields. Can
Oh,
you talk
yeah.
a little bit about your work with them?
Yeah, so I never got the chance to do when I was in New York and enough working with a lot of these folks like Tyler Bunch and Leslie Carrera Rudolph and getting to know Paul Rudolph and Ryan Dillon, of course. Ryan Dillon worked with me on Imagination. That's where I got to meet him. Ryan Dillon's now doing Elmo, and being able to and being really good friends. Also, Laura McLean, she's absolutely incredible, and just being able to to get on the set and being able to assist here and there. I never got to do anything like huge. I was in that I was thankfully enough to be like in the pool outside the pool. Right? There's like their pool of people that they use. Then there's a pool outside the pool and they need a little extra hands for other things and outside shoots and things like that. Any kind of little assists like that. So it's just always one of those really great things when you just kind of go on that set. And that's tough. It's every time that I've been lucky enough to go on the Sesame set, you have that I'm on the set. It's so good. Oh, look, there's Snuffleupagus hanging from the ceiling. Because he's huge and there's no room for him, so he's up there. So cool. Yeah. So
that's great.
little. I couldn't even tell you like anything specific.
That's great. That's great.
It really is. When you were talking about like, oh, I hope I get it. I hope I get it with the auditions. I swear I got vibes of a chorus line with their opening number.
Yeah, it's the God I hope I get it. God I hope I get it. Yep. Yeah.
Yep.
That's exactly right. I mean,
Yep.
it's the exact reference for sure.
It is.
And it's kind of genius why they have it in that show too, because
Oh,
it is,
absolutely.
It's kind of an overriding theme of these people just driving themselves into the ground because they want it so bad.
Right.
Definitely.
You got to perform Crow T Robot in various projects with
Yeah.
Mystery Science Theater 3000,
Sure
MST3K for short. What was that all like? Because
So,
you got to do a tour with them,
Yeah.
along with some other stuff.
Two
What was
live
it?
tours.
Two
So
live tours.
yeah, I'll give you a brief story about that. So that's again something that there's a really great phrase that has existed for a long time, but I always equate it to another one of my voice acting mentors, Rob Paulson, the great Rob Paulson, who's Yakko
Oh my
Warner,
gosh, yes.
and Pinky and the Brain,
And
of
Carl
course, and-
Weezer, so many
Oh,
characters.
Carl Weezer is so good. He's a brilliant actor, and a brilliant voice performer. But I don't believe this is necessarily his particular quote, but I equate it with him because he says it a lot, and it's success is where opportunity meets preparation, or luck rather. Luck. He's like, I don't believe in luck. Luck is where opportunity meets preparation, and I fully believe that. And that's another way of saying, we make our own luck, kind of, and it's when the opportunity presents itself and you are prepared enough to capitalize on that opportunity, you're gonna get it. I firmly believe that, and that is a case in point for Crow and Mystery Science Theater is the opportunity that I never in a million years would have ever thought would have come to life. This was a show that has been dead, that had been canceled since 1999. That show did not exist right? Like never in a million. It was a very important show to me growing up, and it definitely fed into a lot of my like all of my loves. My love of movies, my love of puppetry, my love of comedy. All that stuff. It was an amalgam of everything that I jived with, and so I was drawn to that show in a big bad way. So what I didn't realize was when the opportunity presented itself to audition for a live version of Mystery Science Theater, I had this realization of, oh my God, I've been preparing for this my entire life. Like everything for this moment, where I am, and all of the training, all of the skills, all of the passions that I've followed with puppetry, voices, character work, just acting in general, improv, all of these skills that I had amassed over 30 plus years set me up, prepared me for this moment to have this opportunity to audition for this show. I was like, I've been preparing I never felt more prepared and or ready for an audition in my entire life than when that happened. Once I got over the like, wow, is this happening? How is this a thing that is real? So that's.
Hey, stranger.
Oh no.
Oh,
No, somebody's crashing.
What?
Yeah, you know who that is.
What?
I know, he just pops in out of nowhere.
What?
I know. Can he stay?
Okay.
All right, I guess we'll let him stay.
I
It's
guess
right
I'll
in the
let him
middle of
stay.
like a real deep story.
Bob, how could
DJ
you?
Bob.
Hijacking our show again for what, like the 8th time?
I don't
Something like
care.
that.
I'm just locked in a closet. It's
Oh my goodness. Hi, Bob.
Hi, Bob.
How are
Hey,
you?
Bob.
DJ Bob Runkle, ladies and gentlemen.
DJ
Yes.
Bob Runkle.
DJ
the,
Bob.
the man, the myth, the legend himself.
Yes.
Crowd goes wild. Hijacking his friend's show.
I
You know who
mean,
doesn't? You know who doesn't hijack shows? Jake. I never see Jake just jumping in on the
That's
DJ
true.
Bob
Jake
show.
never does that.
Um,
Jake never
Okay,
does.
as the
okay,
DJ Bob
Bob,
show editor in
Bob,
chief who edits all of the episodes and listens to all the episodes, I
Bob,
don't recall
Where do you want me to do that?
a Jake crash.
never.
Oh, shade.
Girl, the shade of it all.
Shade of it all. Matt like that.
I
Oh man, I
did.
got drops. Got drops for days. I told you guys, I cut my
Uh-huh.
teeth in radio. I got drops.
Well,
I
no,
love turning drops fun on Zoom.
Yeah.
It's fun. We're here to have a good time. It's the Happy Nostalgia Show.
Yes.
Do you need water? Do you want a burger? You hungry?
Yeah, I just took care of that.
Oh, okay. So you're able to get food at least, even though you've been in the closet for 5 days.
This episode is not sponsored by DoorDash.
Well played.
So, Nate, what do you think of these guys?
Oh, they're super rad. They're awesome. They're super good. They're super kind, welcoming. They've been listening to me talk basically nonstop for almost an hour.
That's
It's
why I
their
came in.
show. They've asked one question, and I haven't stopped. They got to a second question, and as we're starting the second question,
You came up.
happen
You're
to just
here.
like crash in here.
Going back to Mystery Science
Yes.
Theater 3000, one of our previous guests actually worked on that too, Kelsey Brady.
Kelsey, yes.
Yes. Yes.
You guys had Kelsey on? Yeah, Kelsey is a
Yep.
very, very near and dear friend of
Yes.
mine. And
Yes.
we've worked together we've known and worked with each other for many, many years. And give you a brief synopsis on that. Yeah, so when I got cast in the first live tour of the show, when it came to the second tour, again, it was one of those things that was like, we need a swing. We need to have a swing. Cut to, and I'll just preface this really quickly. I'm no longer with the production. I had to leave the production for family reasons.
Right.
And namely, I had a kid. And that took up a lot more. I needed to be home. And the
Of
show
course.
was needed to go still back out on the road and do more things, so I was unable to commit to the time, so had to leave for family reasons. But come for the second live tour, as we were prepping it post-COVID, when all started happening really fast. In light of COVID, and in light just in general, when you're on the road, any show that's traveling should have coverage. Should have we call them a swing. Somebody that can, if somebody gets sick, somebody gets hurt, the show can still go on because you have the understudy. You have somebody to go in for you. And so advocated to get a swing for the show. And Kelsey is literally my go-to number one recommendation all the time.
Great.
For
I love her.
She's just an incredible talent. But anytime anybody's looking for a female puppeteer who's adept at monitor work, also can sing and voices and characters and stuff like that, just like she's always my number one. And it made sense for us for the show to have a female swing because there was really 4 of us in there, but it was 2 female roles and 2 male roles. But the cool thing is, like, and I was cast as Crow. And the cool thing about Crow is, like, there was like nowhere does it say that Crow has to be a man. Doesn't have to be a guy. Why? You know, and so he's a robot. You know. The characters can change. And so hiring Kelsey as the swing, she could cover both female tracks in our live show, but also could cover Crow, which initially we needed her to do because I was going to have to leave to go see my son be born because I wasn't going to miss that. So then that's how she got involved with the show, and the show is immensely better for it. She's just a phenomenal talent and a gem of a human being, and I love her dearly.
Yes.
So I got to, but I worked with the show for the last 2 live tours, and during COVID, I'm still kind of when all that was happening, we did a lot of like remote stuff and did some live streaming. Things for the show. Ended up being hired as a writer for the show for season 13 as they were developing that, and was able to film some stuff right before we hopped on the road for the live tour, and then post my baby being born, I just couldn't commit the time to other filming schedules and things and other things that they needed to do, so had to unfortunately part ways because family does come first, my friends, and yeah. So that was my stint with that, and it was I loved every second of it, and it was just an amazing experience. The show is very important to me, and I had it was phenomenal. It was just phenomenal to be a part of it and bring that character to life. I love Crow. I love Tom too. I actually got to play. There was a fun stint when we had Kelsey that. And one of our guys, Connor McGiffin, the great Connor McGiffin who plays Tom Servo on the live version, got COVID. Got COVID on the road on the second tour. And so guess what? He was out for 14 days. So thankfully, we had a swing. And Kelsey could be Crow, and I swung in as Tom. Because I was already familiar with the show from the ground up, especially for the second round, and helped write it. So I was very familiar with Tom's role, so I got to be Tom Servo for a number of performances as well. So I've been Crow, T-Robot, and Tom Servo for Mystery Science Theater 3000 live.
Nice.
Nice.
But again, and that all just stems from I love bringing characters to life, and you know, I find my connections to my characters. I love all the characters that I get to be, and being able to just animate them physically and also vocalize them is just. Again, this is my passion that keeps me going, keeps me trucking.
Definitely.
In this old world.
So
You
now, how did your love of puppetry kind of transition into having your own podcast? Because I know for a couple years you did a podcast, Getting Felt Up.
Yes, Getting Felt Up, a puppetry podcast with Dan and Nate. Honestly, it really came from kind of what we're just doing right here. And this is, I hate to be like, he's like, yeah, we did podcasts before podcasts were really a thing. Podcasts basically had just kind of started. They were in like kind of their infancy, a little like the first few years. Mm-hmm. This was around, I want to say 2009, 2010. So I think podcasts really hit in like 2007. I want to say.
Yeah. Mhm.
And around 2009-ish, doing Imaginocean. 2009, 2010, we were doing Imaginocean, and my buddy Dan, we still my best friend in all of the world, Disney Dan on YouTube. He now has a massive
Oh
YouTube channel.
yes.
Disney Dan on YouTube, huge channel. Go check him out. It's so funny, so really great costume evolutions and breakdowns of the Disney parks and stuff like that, and other nostalgic things. But we were in Imaginocean together, and we actually met at that audition that I had talked about at the beginning. We auditioned right next to each other. And so we sat on that bench outside the door, and that's how we first met and got to know each other. I got cast in the original production. He ended up being a part of the show, and he worked on our media team, and he would go out and like do live things for the show while we were doing the show. So he was part of our promotion team, and so he stayed with the show, and then he became the swing. For back to my swing talk, like you need to have a swing. You gotta have coverage when you're doing a live show and doing multiple shows a day, and multiple or every show every day a week. So he was our swing for the show. Anyway, just in this just chatting and talking about stuff that we love and talking about puppets, and as podcasts were really starting to take off, we were like, there's no podcast that's really talking about there's movies podcasts, sure, there's stand-up comedy podcasts and things like that, but it's like nobody's talking about puppetry. So we were like, Let's do it. And at the time, it was a funny pun, getting felt up, a puppetry podcast. And you'd be like, whoa, what does that mean? And then you're like, oh, puppets, I get it. So it was more of a joke. Doesn't really, it didn't age well, that pun. But yeah, that's really kind of how it started. And we were like, we want to shine a light on this world that we love. And there's so many talented people that make these kind of things happen, that make these shows happen, from the performers to the writers to the music producers and other creators of puppet shows. Well-known stuff, but stage puppetry, but then we wanted to open up the realm of puppetry too, because even still today, when you say puppet, people immediately think Sesame Street, or they think Muppets, or they think like a sock on the hand with eyeballs, and that's a puppet. I'm a puppeteer now, right? But a puppet can be anything. Puppetry, the art of puppetry, as you guys well know, is much more vast than that. There is hand and rod puppetry, but there's also marionettes, and there's shadow puppetry, and there's object manipulation, and things like that. So that art form is such a beautiful, and that takes me back again to my passion of why I think puppetry is always at the root of what I do. It's just it's one of the, if not the oldest form of storytelling that we did as humans, telling stories. It's just such a beautiful art form and a beautiful way to visually tell a story, even if there's no words, through shadow puppetry and things like that. So we wanted to shine a light on that too, because living in New York, there's a lot of that whole world. Is in there. There was lots of people that have their own shows that create them and showcase them in cabarets and tour them at festivals and things like that. So we really wanted to shine that light in there so people could kind of get a broader scope, a little bit more of a broader appreciation, if you will, of the art of puppetry versus just immediately thinking, oh, it's just this. You know what I mean? But still, that's what most people think.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
But yeah, you can still find it. I think the episodes are still up there. We did it. Yeah, we had almost 100 episodes or something. And then, of course, life finds a way. And, people get busy and things happen. Careers take turns. People got to move. People, life kind of happens. So we kind of ended up having to let that podcast go. At some point, Dan and I are best friends, and we still talk. And he's got his channel, which is massively taking off, and I'm very busy in my work. But one day we're thinking about maybe starting something up again. We'll see.
Nice.
We'll see what happens.
Definitely.
But go check it out. There's some really great chats, interviews. It's classic. It's old school. It's just audio. There's a couple actually towards the end, and this is actually towards the end of it. Because I had to move to Florida. We started doing live streams back when like Google was doing. You can see them on YouTube, actually. Some of our live chats that we were able to do in the early days. And one of our even early ones. Do you guys remember Periscope? When Periscope was a thing?
Oh yeah.
We had one of our first, one of our early podcasts with Ryan Dillon. We fired up a Periscope and we started periscoping while we were recording. Periscope was basically like the procedure to like Facebook Live, like going live on like just live streaming, but it was kind of like an app on a phone. Yeah, I don't know if somebody bought it. Something bought it. Either Facebook bought it out or something like that. Periscope doesn't exist anymore, but it was one of those, and like people could engage with us live while we were recording. And he had Karen Beige, one of his characters, like talking to the people on Periscope. It's really funny. I think you can find that on YouTube too. Anyway, lots of good chats, lots of good, really good stuff. Noel McNeil, we had everybody.
Nice. Yeah, you've had a lot of guests that we interviewed as well, because you had didn't you have Stephanie on, Stephanie DeBruzzo?
Yeah,
you had Stephanie on.
Stephanie, Leslie Carrera Rudolph.
Yeah, we've had Leslie on.
We had Leslie.
I got to go, and Leslie's a
Paul,
dear friend. I actually got to like go to her apartment and like we sat down, and I think there's some video up there of our chat as well. Just had like a great like 3-hour chat that got recorded.
That's almost how long ours was. Almost 3 hours.
She is such a massive inspiration to me as well, solely in my in my character approach. She is one of, if not the most brilliant character performer in a way. And what I mean is she does the work, the deep dive work that most actors don't, especially when doing voices or playing characters. Like, she will create full histories, pages of history and backstory of a character that may have like 3 lines. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, that's the level of brilliant connection and detail that she brings to characters, and that is something that I absolutely aspire to and try to do in my own work and stuff like that. So we really connected in that way in our mutual appreciation and approach to character work. But anyway, again, that's just one of those things that, you know, it's such good people. I'm so fortunate to have been doing this for so long and making these connections and these relationships with these amazingly talented individuals, and getting to work with them when the opportunities arise.
I looked at some of your voiceover work prior to prepare for the interview, and you voiced characters on a series called Magic Adventures: The Crystal of Dark.
Yeah.
What was that show like?
So that's a show that as of now didn't get it hasn't been released in America. Again, that was one of my big entrances into the world of dubbing, which is what I do a lot now. I work with a lot of production studios that are doing English dubs for a lot of foreign animated properties and some live action properties. And the Magic Adventures, the Crystal of Dark, was a Korean animated series. There's 52 episodes, I think, and it was an incredible experience. And it was one of those I auditioned, and it was one of those I got a self audition from home and sent it in, and the client liked it, and I got cast as the Wizard of Fire. His name was Vance, the Wizard of Fire, but this wizard got cursed and got turned into a dog and sent to the real world where there is no magic. You know, that old tale. And so like the first like couple of episodes, it's he's just a dog, but he's a very like, he doesn't speak, but he's still, you can tell that like he knows what's going on. He's not just like a dog. He's like, you can tell he reacts and does, but it was all like, you know, I had to keep, it was like 10 episodes of just dog noises, couple flashbacks when he was the wizard, and then when he gets back into the magical land, even as the dog, then he talks and he can still shoot fireballs from his paws. So he was the Wizard of Fire, Vance, the magical Wizard of Fire. But that was an amazing, super fun series. I know it aired in Korea. I think there's random clips of it on YouTube, but yeah, it never got a release in the States, to my understanding. And that's kind of like one of the things, that's the nature of this kind of biz. And there's a lot of projects that I've worked on, and like I said, I have some that are in the works now that I don't know where they're gonna go. I don't know where they're gonna air. That's a whole other side of the biz that I don't have any kind of nature understanding of what's going on behind the scenes on what platform it's getting picked up on, or where it's going to stream or air in the States, if at all, or if it just exists in their, playing in their main country, and then they can click over to English if they want, kind of vibe. But that was a super fun series, super clever, super magical, and funny, really funny.
So you lend your voice to dozens of audiobooks. What is it like getting to do that?
Oh man, audiobooks is an entirely different beast in the voiceover realm. And this is, I know, again, it sounds like we're talking about a broken record of follow your passion. You really got to love what you do. When it comes to audiobook narration, you really got to love to read. Because it is not as easy. Again, same thing with puppetry, as you guys even know. Like, most people have this, like, oh, it's puppets. I just put a puppet on, super easy. It's not as easy as all that. But also, nor is producing or just narrating an audiobook. It's not as easy as you think it is. It's not just reading. A narrator, a good narrator, in my estimation, you're performing the story. You're telling the story in the way that it needs to be told. So you need to connect with the story. You need to connect with what the author's vision is of the story and who this character is. If it's if the audiobook is told from a very specific point of view, knowing what that point of view is. Who is this character, and what are they? What's the pacing? What's the energy? There's a lot that goes into it. And you really have to love stories. You really have to love storytelling, and you have to know how to read, which is helpful.
Yeah.
When reading an audiobook, when narrating an audiobook. But it is also it can be a marathon. It's long. It takes a long. It's not done in 5 minutes. A lot of books, a lot of novels. If you type it on Audible, click a book that you'll be like, oh, this book is 10 hours long. Great. At the end, when that audiobook is 10 hours long, what I tell anybody when you see that, double it for the narrating part, for just the recording, and then double it again, because then it's got to get edited. Right? So there's a whole little thing now. You got slow rolls. You don't necessarily want to do all of that at once. Now, granted, with audiobooks, there is, and I have the ability to do it, and I have been doing it for a long time as an audio producer as well. I can fully produce, and I have fully produced audiobooks, both narrating them and editing them, mastering them, and fully having them ready to go to be out for consumption. But many of my books, especially starting out, I was solely booked as a narrator, where I went into a studio, sat down, and somebody was either directing me, or I had an engineer that was with me to, I flub. They go, up, stop, back it up, and then do a little punch and roll, and just kind of keep going into that. So it takes a lot of, it's a totally different beast. You got to really love doing it. And it's helpful to be able to really lock into the story, and then kind of get in the zone, get in the vibe. And the more you do it, the better you can get at, reading for long clips where you don't necessarily flub, or you miss up a word and things like that. It's a lot of little nooks and crannies that can creep up when you're doing an audiobook, whether it's like, oh, I haven't drank water in 2 hours, my mouth is all dry, and now I'm like making all these weird sounds, and oh, my stomach's grumbling, can we pause, I gotta eat something, there's
Right.
So it's a lot goes into it, but it comes from I found, and how I rolled into audiobook work was in New York at the very beginning of my voiceover pursuit. As I started to coach and work on that in New York, there wasn't a lot of my strength, I felt, and still is, but at the time it was like animation. I want to do animation, and I want to do video games. That's what I want to do as a voice actor. And my first agent in New York said, great, that's what you want? You got to go to LA.
Definitely.
And I had just moved to New York, right? I was recently there. I was like, I can't just pack up and move to LA. And I was like, well, if you want, and this was in the early 2000s. It's very different now with remote capabilities and things like that. But at the time, where everything was in studio, most everything was in studio, all the animation work and the video game work was LA. If that's what you wanted to do, you needed to be there so you could be there in the room. And you could get, when you would get an audition from your agent, your audition was, there wasn't a lot of home recording auditions. It was, hey, you're booked for 2 o'clock at this studio tomorrow. That's your audition, right? And you didn't get the audition beforehand. You went to the studio at your call time, you signed in, and they handed you a piece of paper with the audition on it. And you had 5-10 minutes maybe to prep before you got called into the booth to do your audition. That's the way it was done. That's the way it was done for a very, very long time. Now, for the most part, it's you get the email from your agent, and it's like, hey, it's due at this time. Record it on your own and send it in. That wasn't the way it was done, right? So it was cold, and you had to learn to like cold read and make choices and boom, and just be able to do it and be there. But again, you had to be in the room. And that's why animation and video games was all LA based. But he was like, but if you want to make money doing voiceover work, you stay in New York and you do commercials. This is where all the commercial work is. So I had to shift gears. And I had to focus my coaching in the voiceover realm to on commercial reads, which is an entirely different genre of voiceover. So therein, while being in New York though, and still working, doing puppet stuff and doing character work and doing character voices and things like that, my name started to go around in the studios and the agencies and things like that. And I got contacted by a studio seeing if I would be interested in narrating this children's book. And I was like, again, it was one of those, I didn't even think of that. I didn't even think about audiobooks. Audiobooks also wasn't what it was now. Like, there's books on tape, absolutely. Books on tape, books on CD. And a lot of my earlier audiobooks didn't even go on Audible right away. They just came out on CD. You could get, I was like, my CD's in Barnes & Noble. This was before Audible was really a thing. God, I'm so old, you guys. So that was like oh, wow, I didn't even think of that. But what it turned out to be, and I found that scratched the animation character video game, the itch that I had to do that through voiceover, being these characters. And what I still love about audiobooks, and especially like children's books or middle grade titles, which I do a lot of, I have a lot of really great series. Sci-Fi Junior High is a great series. There's a really amazing series that I did, a 4-book series called Dr. Critchlore's School for Minions. And not like the minions, like the yellow ones, not those minions, but like it takes place in a world, it's very Harry Potter-esque, but it takes place in this world where there are these schools that train like werewolves and mummies and vampires and other kind of like creatures to be minions for evil overlords throughout the world. And so that's how they hire their minions, as if they graduated from these schools. It's a really fun story. But what I found in doing this is like, as an actor, as a voice actor, I get to be and portray and characters that I would never get cast in on stage or on camera as myself, right? I wouldn't fit the visual element, the visual connective element that is needed to portray this character in a truthful way for an audience to believe it, right? But so as a voice actor, there's a lot more freedom there. I get to play a lot more characters and types of characters, creatures, things like that, aliens, animals, that I could never be as myself on stage or on camera. But within this realm, and as time has gone on, and as we are entering, increasingly getting more enlightened and more inclusive. We talk about this on the DJ Bob Show, of course, is like inclusivity, not just disability inclusion, but across the board inclusion. And in the voice world suffered from that as well, of not necessarily being as inclusive. And so now, because there's a much broader vision of this world, that even in the voiceover realm now, thankfully, that they are casting things more appropriately, meaning more age appropriately, racially appropriately, gender or non-gender appropriately for certain roles, even within the voiceover community of any kind of animated thing, right? Or voiceover thing, which is excellent. And that is because of authenticity, right? These people authentically portraying a character that you can connect to. So there are many roles now in voiceover that I would also not get cast in. But as a narrator in an audiobook, I get to play everybody. And that is something that drew me into it. It's like, I'll get cast as 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 characters in this one series for something. But now in this book, I get to play everybody. 20, 30 different characters. I get to play the kid and his dad and his mom and his sister and his baby brother and the evil villain trying to capture him and the evil villain's henchmen. I get to play everybody. That was such a cool thing for me to kind of realize. Mm-hmm. And that added to my love of audiobooks and that kind of storytelling, and as a challenge as a voice actor, because as the sole narrator, I get to play all of these characters and stretch those character muscles. So that's something that really keeps me coming back and doing audiobooks and stuff like that.
Definitely. I know you also just kind of mentioned doing commercial work as well. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a bit about that?
Sure. Like, what do you mean? What do you want to know? What do you want to know about the commercial world?
Like, because I know, we talked about doing voiceover for, audiobooks, and you mentioned e-learning in the beginning, and
Mm-hmm.
now doing voiceover for like different commercials. Like, do you do commercials for like what type of outlets do you do?
So kind of anything. So like typically in the voiceover realm, in commercials, there's TV commercials and radio commercials. Right? Mm-hmm. And each of those is very different. The different styles, different different performance needs, and it all varies between the client of whatever the commercial is for. If it's for a brand, if it's for a product, if it's for, there's different brands, there's different products, there's, for the types of commercials, there's food, there's toys, there's game commercials, there's clothing commercials, there's car commercials, there's jewelry, watch there can be a commercial for anything. So it is a very specific genre. And what's cool about commercials though is that it is so varied, and there's different energies, there's different connections, there's different approaches to copies, and it all depends on the ad agencies creating the commercial for this brand and what the overall vision of it is for this spot. And then they get into a time thing, and there's, on average, there's the 60-second commercial or a 30-second or a 15-second commercial. And they'll have different copy that or a script that, fits within that type of window. But I've done commercials for a lot of big brands. I've done things for Taco Bell, done things for Xbox, Verizon, and then a lot of independent, a lot of regional, local stuff, local business commercials, in all different kind of parts of the country. But the commercials can also vary too. Sometimes, it's like, could be just the disembodied head just kind of talking informationally. A lot of, for like pharmaceutical commercials, reading, talking about, the overall thing about commercials, which is really cool, and if any voice actors are looking to get into commercials, is that you have to remember that a commercial voice is somebody that is, and this changes also too with the times and the market. And right now, the market is this very natural, grounded, just you guys and I just talking, right? And just connecting in that way, and just sharing something that I think you would like. Sharing something that I think you would that will help you or solve your problem. And that's really what commercials is like, this will solve your problem, whatever that problem may be, right? And I'm using that as a general term. It's not like, oh, it's a problem, but it's like, this is going to help you. You want this because it will do this for you, right?
Right.
Something that you need, that kind of thing. And it's that kind of approach. And it, like I said, it varies. Sometimes those commercials are written where it's like me just describing the information to you in a casual, conversational way, something that I think you'll really like it, and you go check this out. Or the commercials are designed and created theatrically, where they're kind of like a scene. Like you'll hear that a lot in radio commercials where there's, a husband and wife or two buddies talking to each other about something, and then I do a lot of lottery commercials, like for the Kansas City Lottery and Colorado Lottery and things like that, little spots like that for radio ads and things that pop up on Spotify, Spotify ads and things like that. I've done a lot of those as well. So it really is a wider space than most people think as well. But they each have a very specific approach and need, and style and energy and vibe. It's all about just kind of tapping into what the general vision is of the commercial. Is it very serious, and who am I talking to? It's very acting 101, right? Like,
Right.
Am I doing a commercial for a retirement home for my ailing grandparents, or am I doing a commercial for, a super cool toy that all these kids are really going to love? Like, go check this out. It's going to be so much fun. Is it going to have that kind of energy versus like, come over to this retirement home. You're going to have a blast, right? That's not the guy that they want for the retirement home. You see what I mean? So it's discovering what is needed and how we fit into that. So I love doing commercials. I love doing all different varied commercials, and I've worked hard on expanding my range. So I'm not just the guy that talks really fast and excited, but I can also be the guy that's like, hey, don't worry, you got this. We got this together, and especially during COVID, there was a lot of like, we're all in this together, just me talking, being real, that kind of thing. And I spent a long time finding that, like, that real guy where I'm not performing. That's the big thing that a lot of people struggle with when they first start with voice acting. Put these headphones on, stand in front of the mic, and they hear themselves in this microphone, and they're like, okay, and now I'm reading the commercial to you. And that's not usually the vibe that they want. It's really like, takes a lot of practice to get to that point.
Definitely.
But I love that. I love playing the range, expanding my range. And I'm always working on it. I'm always stretching my range, getting stronger, getting better, finding more deeper connections that come across in my performances.
Absolutely.
Definitely. So you also did some voice work on video games. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, so video games, again, it's another beast. It's a totally different beast. And this is a big thing I say to all my people that are getting interested in voiceover. Is not just one thing. I do voiceover. Okay, you do voiceover for what? There's different genres of voiceover. It's very big. And so voices for video games, again, is as varied as any animation, as any animated character, as any commercial. The video games are different. Especially video games too has been the fastest growing realm in the entertainment industry. Like, over the last 20 years, nothing has grown as much as video games, and let alone the financial explosion of video games, because games were $70 a pop 20 years ago, and they stayed saying $70 a pop. So you're seeing like these games making millions, if not billions of dollars. But the technology has grown with them, and so the ability to have more, as the graphics have gotten better, and the technology again has grown, the computing power of all these games, that they've been able to have more vocal performances, more real captured vocal performances, and everything, like especially on these big games, they're also cinematic now. They're huge. There's these giant world builders, right? There are these massive worlds that you can spend just hundreds of hours exploring. And throughout all of it, all the background, there's always something going on. There's always life, sound design, and some little voice that's kind of off in the distance and things like that. So it's been fun to kind of grow with that world, and I haven't got to do a lot. I wish I could do it. Again, I wasn't LA based, so I didn't get to do a lot of video games that as much as I've liked, but I've definitely got to do some, and some of my favorite have been a couple years ago I did this great, talk about happy nostalgia for me, like the point and click adventure games. I loved the point and click like PC games of like, walk over to this, click this, look at this.
Yes.
grab this and then hold on to it and then use it 6 hours later for something else. You know,
Right?
oh, I have this thing. That's what I need. I loved those games. I thought that
Yes.
Right?
there was something really fun about the point and click adventure games like
yeah.
Monkey
Oh my
Monkey
gosh.
Island, The Adventures of Monkey Island, and then when they redid when they like remastered it, The Adventures of Monkey Island, like released it on the old Xbox or Xbox 360. Oh, it's just so fun and so funny. I was a big fan of Discworld. Again, this is aging me, guys. I don't know if you guys ever anybody familiar with Discworld? Terry Pratchett's
Oh yeah.
Discworld at all? Yeah. So it was a great PC game that was based around a book and series, Terry Pratchett series, Discworld. But it was very much that. It was a wizard, like a hapless wizard, voiced by Eric Idle in the early 90s PC game. Point and click. Highly recommend looking up, watching videos of it. But again, so I got to do one of those recently, and it's called Angelo and Demon, and it's a very wild, wacky story of a YouTube blogger who gets mistaken by death, comes to take somebody, and he gets the wrong apartment number. And he takes Angelo and brings him to hell. And Angelo's not supposed to be there, so now Angelo's got to get out of hell. So he partners up with this demon named Demon, and he wants to be a rapper. It's wild, it's wacky, but it's a point-and-click adventure game. And I got to voice Angelo, be the titular character, one of the titular characters of Angelo and Demon. And that was a fun thing because it was one of those, again, and this is what happens in the video game realm as well, is that you'll get this. It's just so many, because you have to vocalize any option that could happen, especially in a point-and-click adventure game. If the player clicks on something, was he going to respond if it works? Like if there's a yes response, or yeah, that's the right thing, or how does he react, right? So there's so many options, and you have to read all of those. And before the game is built and finished, I just have these lines. I just have these lines kind of seemingly out of context. And so I kind of have to go really, really start to think fourth dimensionally. And being a puppeteer, that's helped me to kind of go, well, what is this kind of going to look like? What do I imagine this happening when this, and the creator's usually pretty good. It's like, you click this and it's the wrong thing, or this shocked you, or this, something happened. This is the reaction. And that helped me, figure out, oh, this is how I should read that line. This is how I feel like he would read that line in response to whatever the player does. But that takes, again, kind of like an audiobook, takes a long time. Takes a long time. You read all of those options. And then, again, even with the other, so I love the point and click. You can watch the whole walkthrough of Angelo and Demon on YouTube and listen to me be this little snarky YouTuber trying to navigate his way through hell. It's pretty funny. I had a good time with it. But some of these other games, all the effort sounds and doing like, death sounds, you get punched in the shoulder, but now you're getting kicked in the stomach. Now you're getting stabbed in the leg, but now you just got shot in the back. Each one of those is a different vocalization, right? It's a different sound. It's a different reaction, different moment. So, and you got to bank all those. So they're banking all of that stuff because any of that stuff can happen at any time. So, I love video games as a fun, really fun to be a part of like, these wild lines that could be said at any time as gameplay is happening. But then things when something very specific happens, doing those efforts and things like that. And my work in the dubbing realm, especially with animated projects from like Japan or China or Korea, especially any of the fighting anime things, there's a lot of there's a lot of those. There's a lot of effort and fighting sounds. So having been trained and worked with that for many years as a dubbing voiceover artist, has helped me with, just creating efforts for video games and things like that too.
Definitely.
Super fun. It's a super fun thing. But again, it's stuff like this that like people don't think about. People really don't think all of the work that goes into it. It's why games take
Right.
2-3 years before they come out. There's a game that just dropped today called Starfield, or a couple days ago. Starfield, and it's all over the place. So many of my voiceover colleagues and stuff that were a part of it are allowed to finally say, hey, I'm in this 3 years later. It was all done during COVID. So it's wild. So hopefully in the next hopefully by the end of the year, I'll have like a good 2 or 3 things that I'll be able to like, hey, I'm in this, but I can't talk about it yet.
Right.
Because NDAs, my friends, are a real thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's just I like to be able to. And thanks for asking me all these questions. And I know I'm going on and on and on. But I again, very similarly to why I wanted to start getting felt up, the puppetry podcast, was that to shine a light on a lot of the work, a lot of the stuff that goes behind the scenes. And it's not to scare anybody away from wanting to do it. It's just I think it's helpful to be informed. It's like there's a lot more to it than just me putting on some headphones and standing behind a mic, and now I'm talking, and now I can make money. It's not as you guys know with puppetry, and I use puppetry and voiceover in tandem very much with this. There is this misconception that, oh, it's just this. It's just talking. It's super easy. I talk every day. I could do that. I can just plug in my microphone and start talking and making money. Same thing. It's like, oh, it's just puppets. I just gotta put a thing up. There we go. I'm a puppeteer now. It's not there's a lot. I wouldn't say there's a little more to it. There's a lot more to it than just that. And that's all. I just like to share that with folk and things like that. But it is those added challenges, those added differences that keep things alive for me in all these different genres. And I've spent the better part of 20 years achieving the ability to do these different genres. I didn't just start out going, I'm doing all of it. I had one very particular focus, and then I started to branch off as I applied all my strengths and skills that I learned in one and applied it to the other one. Learn more, apply that to the other one, learn more, and apply and apply and apply. So, and I'm constantly learning. I always consider myself, I coach, I teach, I work full-time for a living, but I'm a perpetual student. I'm constantly learning. I take workshops. I take... I coach. I have my own coaches, my own mentors, and things like that I still work.
In addition to coaching and doing workshops yourself.
Exactly. Yeah, facilitating them myself and being a coach and a teacher for others. I am also always learning and strengthening and practicing. It's very important to keep doing it. To keep doing that. Never stop learning. Never stop growing.
Yes, and same goes with puppetry as well. Where if there's a puppeteer who's been doing that same character for over years, they're still learning.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. It's a muscle. It's like I equate it to, sports, and it's something like that. Like the general public, I like to use this analogy, and I use this analogy in my coaching sessions with, in regards to puppetry and voiceover, but I say look at ballet. Like nobody sits at a ballet performance. You watch a ballet performance done by a professional company, and they make it look so easy. They just glide. They're just effortless on the stage, right? Ballet, but nobody in that audience goes, "Oh, I can do that." Why not? Right. Why, when you watch someone make it look so easy, and they're having fun, it's just effort, just gliding, flying, and you're just like. That's amazing. But we as humans, we know our physical limitations. We know, same thing with when you watch weightlifters, just lift it up like it's nothing. But we don't go, I can do that. That's easy.
Right.
We don't do that, right? Why? But with this and with puppetry, we do. People do. They go, that's easy. I can do that. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's an interesting, and I'm like, those people that make it look super, super easy, that voice actor that you love, that you've seen on the internet, that you've seen YouTube videos, they're behind the mic, and they're having a good time, and they're doing all kinds of wacky kind of stuff, or you see that puppeteer, and he's looking down, and you're seeing that one of my favorite moments as a kid was in the Jim Henson Hour, that last episode of the Jim Henson Hour, where they pan that camera down. This is taking me all the way back to the first thing that I mentioned, where I just wanted to know what was happening below the frame. And then Jim backed that camera up, and you got to see the performers with their characters up, and they're all looking at their monitors, and they're going, what's happening? And I was just like, right? When that happens, you see that these people, you're like, look at how they make it look so easy and so effortless and so much fun that we tend to go, I can do that. That's easy. But when you see somebody, an athlete, or a ballerina, or a ballet dancer, or a tap dancer, somebody that you're like, we know that they've trained for years, 10, 20 years to get that good. Gliding across, like watch Dancing with the Stars and all these dancers in their perfect form, and they make it look so effortless. But we know that they worked their asses off for years to do that.
Oh, yeah.
But for some reason, the general public, and it's not everybody, but more often than not, the misconception of this is like, oh, it's just super. I just gotta boop boop boop, ba 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 ba. I'm a voice actor now. You know what I mean? That it doesn't take years of training, that it doesn't take skill, that it doesn't take practice. That the ones that you see are also, even though they are working consistently, they're always still practicing. It's just like I use it as a sports metaphor too. It's like every pro athlete that you see, they don't just show up to the game. All right, game is on this day. Be there. No, they go to practice. They have to practice, right? They have to train. They have to work. Anybody that does a professional musician in an orchestra or in a band, right? They don't just show up to the show. They don't just show up to the concert. They practice. They tune. They make sure their instrument is working, right? They know how to use it, and they practice. And that's what this is. That's what puppetry is, especially with TV puppetry. That's a whole different thing. We didn't even get into like what monitor work is and how much of a brain flip that is when you first start to learn that. But that takes, and if you don't do that for a while, if you haven't done monitor work as a puppeteer, say you did a little bit of it and then you don't do it for a while, guess what? You're going to need to brush up. You got to do a little bit of a brush up before you get to go on set. You know what I mean? You have to practice. You have to learn that skill and keep it up. So, and that's what I like to stress that. I'm like, I spent 20 years to get to what I'm doing and to have achieved the things and the roles and the gigs that I've been super blessed and grateful to have been a part of. I work hard for it, and I still work for it. Didn't just show up and go, give it to me.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so, yeah. But again, I'm not telling anything you don't know. This is for people that are listening that want to do puppetry, that want to do voice work. You got to work. It's called work.
Yes.
You have to work for it.
Yeah.
And doesn't mean you can't do it, but you got to put the time, you got to put the effort, and keep your skills, keep working at it.
Definitely.
Practice.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yep. So
Yep. It's all about that, right? Isn't it practice, little John? Yeah. So he knows. He's still there.
Yep.
He's still there.
He's still there. But yeah,
After all that talking, he's still there.
Especially with puppetry, there is so much more. Like I see people who, like on TikTok, for example, who just do lip sync. And don't get me wrong, lip sync is a good technique, but there's, like you said, there's a lot more character building. Like, what personality do they have, and how are they?
Yeah, no, lip sync is a great to practice for your technical ability of being able to speak with your puppet. And doing, and that absolutely lip sync to a song, to be able to work that muscle for sure. But if you're just doing that, that's where you're gonna stay. You have there's more. If you want to grow with it, if you want to do other things, if you want to perform outside of just having a puppet that's gonna lip sync to stuff, then you have to expand upon that. Get strong in that. Get strong in that technique and that bass. Work on your lip sync. Don't flip top, as you guys already know. Like there are specific ways to keep your eye focus when you drop your thumb, to speak with your puppet. There's very specific technical elements therein as well. It's not just opening it at the right time with all the syllables, right? Because this is not what you want when you're talking fast with a puppet. Learning how to drop syllables, that kind of thing. That's all part of the things that you learn as you go on.
Right.
Yep, absolutely. So you also got to work as an announcer on a handful of episodes of the Wendy Williams show.
Yeah, for the whole season 10 of the Wendy Williams show, which is no longer on.
No longer on the air.
I was
how did that come about?
Audition through my agent.
Nice. Yeah, Wendy Williams show is a wonderful show. I remember seeing that one kind of clip on YouTube where she has like this heavy like hat on, and she like ends up like passing out or something.
Oh yeah, no, she had and it was like just before she had a little bit of a health issue that that actually is what kind of spearheaded the majority of my work. Ended up being was during the time that she had taken time off of the show. Because what had happened was, it was kind of, again, where opportunity meets preparation, right? She had to take a leave of absence from the show for her health reasons, and what typically happened for that show is that she would do her own promos,
right,
for like the next episode or the other episodes in the week, right? And she would do that, like she would record her show and then she would do the promos there live on set, and they would cut those together. When she left the show, they had nobody to do those promos, and so they casted for that, and that's what I got hired for, was to do these promos like Monday, and then read like, on coming up Monday, it's Hot Talk Tuesday, that kind of thing. Like, just get everybody excited. This is what's happening on Tuesday on Wendy. And so it was those little promo spots for upcoming stuff and all the different affiliate stations. And the studio liked working with me. I was super easy to work with, and I was able to crank them out really fast. And they then the live show announcer that would like, now here's somebody coming out, right, live from New York City. It's the Wendy Williams show. They had a live show announcer that they've just had. And he got sick. And he couldn't do some of these live because they had stuff banked. Like, his live thing was banked. And you just hit play. Live from New York City, it's the Wendy Williams show. Now, here's Wendy, right? And they just had that in the bank. He didn't have to do it every single time. It was already in the can. But with the new guest hosts, they needed a new intro every single time. And he ended up getting sick and couldn't do it. And then they're like, hey, promo guy, you want to do it? Absolutely. So I did a lot of like, live from New York City, it's the Wendy Williams show. Now here's your guest host, Nick Cannon. Here's Don Lemon. Here's all of these people. So I got to do all of those like stuff. So my tenure started on that while during season 10, where she had to take a leave, and then I was on when she came back, and then the season ended, and now the show's ended. So
yeah,
but yeah, it came about again. Opportunity meets preparation. The opportunity came out; they needed it, and it was a rush thing. This business too works real fast. Sometimes it's like, hey, we need this rush, like we need somebody now. And the audition came in. I was able to send it in within like 5-10 minutes. So I work full time in this booth, so I'm able to turn off auditions pretty quickly. And they were like, great, done. Get them in. Let's get it done. So worked out in my favor.
Definitely.
Yep.
Awesome.
So moving on from acting and puppetry, you've also worked in the sound department with Defunct TV and Defunct Land.
Yeah.
What's it like working with the sound department for those? Because that's
Well,
an entirely different thing.
Well, yeah, I was the sound department. I was the editor. I was the sound editor. Again, that's my audio production. Begle Booth Studios, my audio production studio, does stuff for YouTube channels and things like that. And I got connected with Kevin at Defunct Land through Dan when he was doing Disney Dan. They were doing stuff together, a lot of theme park stuff. And I reached out to him and I was like, hey, man, I love your content. I love your stuff. I love your mini documentary stuff. I love your documentary style. I was like, but you could sound better. So it could sound a little bit better. And he was like, I agree. You want to do it? And I was like, absolutely. So I became his editor for all his narration and dialogue editor for a couple of his other feature productions and stuff like that. So yeah, I've been working with Defunct Land for the last 3-4 years.
Yeah, my favorite episode of Defunct Land is the one about the Disney Channel theme.
Oh yeah, I mean that was a massive one. It's an incredible piece. That was basically a feature documentary.
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
It's an incredible one. Another big one that we worked on just before that was the whole history of the Fast Pass.
Oh yeah,
another excellent one. And therein, I also got to play a few different characters. I got to play like the boss of the park that's in there. So I got to play some characters as well as doing all the audio editing. But my favorite collaboration that I've gotten to do with Kevin at Defunct Land and also part of Defunct TV and with Dan is we did a whole docu-series, like a 6-part series on the life of Jim Henson, the history of Jim Henson. You guys watch those?
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And what was cool about that, so
awesome.
being a part of that, which is an incredible little docuseries about the life and work of Jim Henson. But my favorite thing that I got to do, in addition to editing all of those, was I also did the wrote, performed, recorded the Squarespace commercials that precede each one of those, that we did in the style of Jim Henson's like Wilson coffee ads, the old classic Wilson coffee ads.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I had two like original characters, one character that I built and one character that Dan had built and that I've just had laying around, and we called them Boss and Cody, and we did this whole like Squarespace ad series that I fired up, threw up my green screen, and I got a very talented puppeteer friend of mine, Calvin Lester, who's down here in Orlando.
Yes, Calvin.
Bird Call fame and like puppet master to the stars at Disney.
Yes.
Calvin's
there you go. This is that Bird Call album. I think I'm actually
Bird Call fan.
I think I'm on that album. I'm actually on that album. Played a few different characters on that album as well. I believe my name is on that CD.
Yeah, we
I'll
you have to look, but
we actually did
we recently did like a reunion interview with most of the cast from it to celebrate the 20th anniversary.
Yeah, including Calvin and Kelsey.
Yep. Thankfully, in my stint when I first moved to Florida, I ended up working with Disney. Yeah, is my name in there?
Can confirm, yes.
Nailed
vocals, Calvin, Nate Begle.
Yes.
So Calvin, again, one of my nearest and dearest, and work with a lot of collaborate. We did the Muppets in Disney World. Together.
Yes.
I was part of the opening cast of the Muppets in Liberty Square. Super great times. And but I was like, hey, you want to come help me with these? And he was like, absolutely. So so we shot all those in like a day. And I got to put those up. And those were some of my favorite little things that we got to do, those fun little Squarespace commercials. And honestly, I think if you go on YouTube, you can look up like Boss and Cody, Squarespace, or whatever. And there's like somebody put a whole like supercut of all of them together, which is kind of fun.
That's
but
cool.
yeah, I helped wrote, recorded. I do the voices of both Boss and Cody. I pre-recorded them, cut those together. And then Calvin and I puppeteer. Calvin puppeteers Cody, and I puppeteer Boss in all of those spots, and those are super fun. It was like, Cody, what are you doing? It's like, well, boss, you told me to use the first one we did, and that was the spur of it. Cody's just like flapping a net around. It's like, Cody, what are you doing? Well, boss, you told me to catch potential customers using the net, so I am. And he's swiping net, and then he swipes his head, and he's like, Cody, what should you have done? I should have used Squarespace. Quick, 20 seconds. Squarespace thing, and then I got to be the Squarespace, and yes, Cody should have used Squarespace. So I'm like all through all of those spots. So I had a hand in making all of those. So I'm really proud of those. Those came out great.
Definitely.
Yes, absolutely. And since we're about to wrap up, I want to mention a couple of things going back to Johnny.
Johnny T.
Yes. It's really cool that like when you mentioned. So we talk about Imagine Ocean, where Splash and Bubbles like kind of came about because of the Imagine Ocean name.
Because of Imagine
inspired him, to do that show. Which Splash and Bubbles, amazing show, and
so good.
Yes,
and it's all done.
Johnny
it's all done
Leslie.
with puppeteers. It's digital puppetry. They use the digital puppetry. I'm forgetting the name of it now of what it's actually called, but the digital puppetry rig that they basically the Jim Henson Company kind of created for Sid the Science Kid, Dinosaur Train, and that's one of those cool things that a lot of people don't know. They just think it's like CGI, it's just CG, but it's not. It's actually it's computer generated character, but it's being live manipulated by a real puppeteer, by a live puppeteer. And I think you can probably see some behind the scenes of like Leslie on the rig, like doing the playing Bubbles
and Johnny doing Splash,
and Johnny doing Splash, and so it all stemmed from Imagine Ocean, which came about from him, snorkeling one day and seeing all these fish and just kind of coming up with this idea. And then that started as a cruise ship show. It was on the cruise ship for a little bit in a small form. And then as they were workshopping it in New York, they were like, this could be like we could beef this up and make this like a bigger show. And then so that's when I became part of Imagination in the 45-minute like full length version. And then again, it's been a passion project that he just held on to, and then through his connections.
Kind of same goes with kind of same goes with Johnny and the Sprites as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
amazing show.
Johnny and the Sprites, such a great show.
Again,
it's just
so
Johnny
amazing.
Following his passion and
he's been creating he's been creating stuff for years.
Yep, and then again, it rolls right into Fraggle Rock, and he takes this love and care and intention that Jim Henson had. And he said, I'll never forget, too, when our opening night of Imagination, he said Jim Henson always wanted to do a full stage, like puppet musical. And this is something that he always wanted to do and never got a chance to do. So now we're doing it. So we, and that was been a through line for Johnny, for sure. That carried on to all of us doing it as well in honor of Jim. And and then that rolled into then Jim Henson taking that property, and then it became Splash and Bubbles. For a PBS series.
Like I said, he's doing an amazing job for Gobo, for keep going legacy of what Jerry has done for Gobo for the original series.
And that comes down, honestly, it comes down to everything that I was been saying earlier about character work. Like Johnny knows who that character is. He's connected to Gobo on such a real level.
What Gobo is,
Yeah, who Gobo is, and that carries through, and it's and he, as anybody, and I can say this when I took over Crow, when I was playing Crow. Crow was preceded by me by two very talented performers, three prior to when I took it over, or when I had my setup to it, and I always, and I think any performer, and Johnny is very much included in this, when you're playing a character that has existed before you and was portrayed or brought to life from another performer, is to do, not only are you doing, harnessing and just doing that character justice and really understanding and knowing who the character is as they were created, but then also doing justice to the prior performance, the performance of the originator, the original performers. And when I performed him, was basically like an amalgam of everybody, of Trace and of Bill and of Hampton, and I kind of put them together and then added my own little bit to it too, to kind of make him my own as well. And I think that's what every actor does when they take over a role. What they aim to do is to just, the character is priority. The character takes precedence of who this character is and doing them justice. But then also nods and keeping with what the original performer did as well.
Definitely.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, previously, Chad with Sean Altman, one of the members of
bringing up Rockapella earlier.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Wonderful.
That's awesome.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
So since we're close to wrapping up, are there any words you'd like to say to those who have kind of supported and followed your career?
Honestly, thank you. I'm not on any of the social medias. I had to step away from social media for family reasons and mental health reasons. Social media just wasn't kind of doing it for me.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So I pretty much am just on the LinkedIn now. I just live in the professional world there. But on you can keep tabs with me. My website, natebegle.com, begleboothstudios.com. You can see all my past work and current stuff, and a lot of workshops and webinars and stuff that I'm doing. Anybody, and you guys, thank you for inviting me on. We've talked for a while.
Your pleasure.
I didn't think it was gonna go this long, but again,
you're
good.
And I can just
no worries at all.
It went long, didn't it, John?
Yeah.
And
Even he
so
You're good, man. Yeah.
He's still with us. You good?
Okay.
Okay, he's okay. But no, I thank you to anyone and everyone who's followed me and all of the fun endeavors that I've been a part of, and I love it. This is my passion, bringing stories to life, characters, words to life, and also bringing joy and happiness and just entertaining people has literally been my through line, my passion, and it's what I always want to imbibe in all of the work that I do. So I thank anyone who has followed me and signs up at my website. You can also, if anybody's interested in voiceover work, I do one-on-one coaching, you can reach out to me on my website. I also you can sign up on my website, and for free every week I'll send you a little VO tip, a free voiceover tip in your inbox every week, and then you get firsthand updates on any new stuff, any of my drops of the new projects and stuff that are coming out, but also any of my updates on workshops and webinars and classes and things like that that I have going on. But any good fun, I like to put a nice little VO tip for people that are looking to get into this biz. But
this is called a show, yeah.
But again, it's thank you guys so much for allowing me to ramble on. And and I hope people are still listening or watching or all of that kind of stuff.
We hope so too.
And the last question.
And yes, and your LinkedIn and your social media website and everything will be in the description down below, so people can can follow you and connect.
Yes. So the last question that Matt's about to ask is a question we ask all of our guests at the end. Go ahead, Matt.
Thank you, Chris. Of course, this podcast is called Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show. When you think of nostalgia, what do you think of? Or in your own...
Well, that's one thing.
Yeah, that's one thing.
Nostalgia's alive.
Nostalgia's alive.
What do I think of?
When you think of nostalgia, what do you think of? Or in your own words, how do you define the word nostalgia?
Nostalgia, I think, is just it's love. It's love for it. It's love that carries on. It's love that sticks with you. That's the first thing that jumps to my mind when you think about something that's nostalgic. It's something that you hold on to, right? It's a connection. It's a connection that has sustained time. If that makes sense. That's how I feel about what that is. Like, I loved this, and I still love it, right? And it can change. I feel like it can morph. You know, there are definite things where it's like, I loved this as a kid, and then I watch it now and I go, whoa, that's horrible. Why did I like this? You know, or like, yikes, that didn't hold up well. You know, I was like, case in point, like, I used to love, you know, when we talk about nostalgic, I was like, oh man, that was my favorite as a kid. Like, I loved Howard the Duck, the movie Howard the Duck. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the original movie. And I loved it as a kid. And I watched it recently, within the last couple years, and I was like, whoa. Wow, I don't remember any of this. Yikes. There's a lot of the movie that does not hold up, and a lot of it is super wild. I'm like, what? So it's interesting. And so it's interesting how nostalgia you can have a view of something that remember how you loved something, and then look at it through your today goggles and go, ooh, okay, I'm gonna remember loving it there, and try to forget what I just saw. So that's part of it. But I think nostalgia, it's a connection, it's love that just kind of transcends time and sticks with you. And I think nostalgia is definitely a big part of, you know, what keeps me kind of going. One, you know, it's an enjoyment thing. It's something that we all, nostalgia is also big business. We try to capitalize on our youth, you know, what we had. Oh, remember this toy? Before my mom sold all of my He-Man toys at a garage sale in a box for 25 cents. And it's like, yeah, that Castle Grayskull, I wish I had that right now. You know, there's that pull. So again, I think it's a connection. It's a love that transcends time.
Absolutely. Great words to end on. Nate, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. This was an absolute blast.
Thank you guys. And thanks for letting me go on and on and on.
Yeah,
I can go on. I can keep
I'm glad Bob was
Special thanks to Bob for connecting us.
Where we're going, we don't need roads.
Yes.
Talk about nostalgia.
Yes, and
Yes.
thank you very much for what you're doing over the years. It's what you've done is just wonderful what you're doing. And I'm glad we were able to do this thing.
Thank
Keep up the
you.
great
So
work,
it's
and cannot
a
wait
pleasure
what's
chatting with you
next in
guys.
store for you.
Yeah,
This is
absolutely.
future.
Such a pleasure chatting with you guys. Thank you guys so much.
Yes,
Yes.
of
Keep in
course.
touch.
Happy.
Keep in touch. I'll let you know when this goes up, Nate.
Perfect. Awesome. You guys
All
have an
right.
awesome rest of your day.
Yeah. See you
Thank
too,
you,
Nate.
too.
Bye bye.
Thank you. You
Bye.
too, Nate.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Yes.
And it's goodbye from us as well.
Yes, we absolutely enjoyed our time with Nate Begle. Again, special thanks to DJ Bob for connecting us.
Really, Bob?
Thank you, Bob.
Because I've heard a bit about
Bob, you're the best.
Yes, absolutely. We've heard a bit about Nate from DJ Bob, and we're very glad that he was able to connect the both of us to do this wonderful chat.
Yes.
As always, keep on the lookout for more wonderful interviews. And as always, what do we say, Jake?
Keep nostalgia alive. Take care, everyone. See you next time. Take care. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to another wonderful Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show interview. Be sure to follow Jake and the crew on social media and stream the show wherever you find your favorite podcasts. And as always, remember to keep nostalgia alive. Bye-bye.